special executive orders by President Trump affecting both the US and the world at large?
The federal employees an opportunity to buy out their retirement, or you could say their resignation in return for 7 months of severance pay. Thousands of illegal Indian migrants being forced back to India, regarding which the Indian Ministry of External Affairs has already confirmed that the Indian government will be willing to receive them. Possibility of housing at least 30,000 illegal and dangerous migrants into Guantanamo Bay in order to receive those illegal migrants which the Trump administration considers as too dangerous to be even imprisoned within the US owned territory.
Mr. Trump is acting like a wrecking ball in the United States, and the shockwaves are being received all over the place.
The repeated emphasis by Mr. Trump expressed interest in gathering Greenland and forced Danish leadership to do crisis diplomacy with a number of leading European powers in order to seek their security assistance in case there is a US intervention. The entire edifice of 80-year-old NATO framework hinges on the US promise to provide security to the Western European countries against a Russian threat. All foreign aid programs traditionally have relied heavily on the US aid and US assistance. The entire global NGO network, I think they are going to be deeply affected if the funds that they receive from the US aid around the world is also frozen. Afghanistan is again becoming a hotbed for global terrorism and is hosting global terrorist outfits like Daesh and Al-Qaeda. And if they become deeply entrenched, then the US might have to go back into Afghanistan. Announcement by Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province government that they want to engage Kabul administration in peace talks.
The federal government would say, okay, go, give it a try, knowing that it will fail. That's not happening. There is no General Faz, Corps Commander Peshawar sitting now. The federal government, Pakistan Army are on one page that that was a bad idea and it has hurt us more than helped us. With a fresh episode of The Weekend, I am Murtaza Solangi.
And I am Muhammad
Ali. Quite a few things, Ali, that we have to discuss. Let's start with the US, because US is in the news all over the world, both regionally, nationally, and internationally. There's hardly a country that's not discussing the changes, the seismic changes that have taken place after January the 20th. So let me just ask you, what has changed since January 20th, especially with reference to special executive orders by President Trump affecting both the US and the world at large?
Thank you, Mr. Murtaza, for raising this very important issue. And let me restart by connecting the dots with our last program, in which we asked whether Mr. Trump will be able to walk the talk that he was making and delivering during his election campaign. And it seems that the first week in White House, he has lived up to his reputation, and he has, in some very key issues, actually walked the talk, particularly regarding NATO, regarding immigration, regarding cost cutting drastically across the federal government departments and employments. And if we can briefly focus on these very significant and monumental and somewhat historic decisions, let's first start with the executive order signed by President Trump based on giving the federal employees an opportunity to buy out their retirement, or you could say their resignation, in return for 7 months of severance pay. And that could affect thousands of US government officials and employees across all departments within the Beltway. And this has really left shockwaves felt across all the departments in the US government. And the second issue, which is also very significant, related to another executive order that he has signed, is related to immigration. And in a monumental decision, he has signed an order that the illegal migrants will practically be thrown out, and the process has already started. And it has been planned, it seems, well in advance, before this executive order, it seems, by the Republican Party, because to coincide and facilitate this mass exodus of illegal migrants, a heavy military deployment by the US armed forces has already taken place towards the Mexican border, and 2 flights have already physically taken these migrants back to important Latin American country. But another very significant development which has emerged is the possibility of housing at least 30,000 illegal and dangerous migrants into Guantanamo Bay. So according to latest reports, US Navy has been ordered to make arrangements for hosting, facilitating, and securing the Guantanamo facility in order to receive those illegal migrants which the Trump administration considers as too dangerous to be even imprisoned within the US owned territory. That's the second aspect. The third aspect, I think, is not related to the executive orders, but definitely 3 calls that he has made or received are very significant. He has spoken to some important leaders and demanded that they reduce the oil prices immediately. He has spoken to the Indian Prime Minister as well, and despite some optimism about his early visit to Washington, what deserves significant attention is the possibility of thousands of illegal Indian migrants being forced back to India, regarding which the Indian Ministry of External Affairs has already confirmed that the Indian government will be willing to receive them. But these are the tumultuous and very significant developments coming from the White House. I want to ask you, is there anything significant that you noticed that you want to share with our international audience?
No, pretty much on those lines, but there was a memo that was issued and then they took it back in terms of freezing some of the social benefits. So, Mr. Trump is acting like a wrecking ball in the United States, and the shockwaves are being received all over the place. He has literally polarized the US society to a great extent and is fast becoming a polarizer in chief. The way he is acting, of course, he can take the advantage of the huge vote that he has got, almost and quite a landslide that he got on November 5. So that gives him a lot of confidence and support. But the US newspapers are quite interesting to read these days because there is so much controversy. And Trump, being the showman that he is, he shows it first, and whatever he acts, he tries to, send it to millions of Americans. This illegal immigration that you just talked about, the number is huge, 14 millions. I mean,
Yes.
you can find half a dozen European countries with the combined population of 14 million.
Indeed.
So
Indeed.
it's sending quite shockwaves around the globe. You rightly mentioned Colombia. I was reading a tweet of Colombian president today, who has asked his countrymen who are undocumented workers living in the United States. He has asked, the Colombian president has asked them to return immediately to Colombia, and we will give you special loans to set up your businesses. Dubbed as a socialist president by Trump himself. So it's sending quite a shockwaves. But it would be interesting to see how he resets his relationship with China and Russia. That would be worth watching.
And let me add a couple of more issues which are equally interesting and might actually affect the international peace and security as well, and the US alliance system in particular, which is NATO. I think the repeated emphasis by Mr. Trump to express interest in gathering Greenland is very significant for three reasons. There is much debate in the think tank circle in the Beltway about what possible US interests could be driving this desire. But it has already unnerved Denmark, which considers the Greenland as its sovereign territory for hundreds of years, and forced Danish leadership to do crisis diplomacy with a number of leading European powers in order to seek their security assistance in case there is a US intervention. Now, this is historic and very significant because the entire edifice of 80-year-old NATO framework hinges on the US promise to provide security to the Western European countries against a Russian threat. But once a NATO member feels a security threat from the US president, that completely undermines the whole concept of NATO and will perhaps accelerate the voices and deepen the desire for reducing European dependence on US security and increasing European collective security mechanism for European countries themselves. So this could actually reduce US influence over the Western European countries and disincentivize their traditional hostility towards Moscow as well. So this is very significant. And secondly, towards the global south and developing countries, which includes Pakistan, a very significant development which has perhaps not registered as much attention which it deserves is the executive order related to freezing all foreign aid programs. A lot of non-governmental organizations, charity organizations, schools, medical services, health services around the world traditionally have relied heavily on the US aid and US assistance to, promote a liberal way of life in those and their values in developing countries. I think the entire global NGO network, which focuses on human rights, civil liberties, freedom of press, gender equality, promoting education, I think they are going to be deeply affected if the funds that they receive from the US aid around the world is also frozen, and which could lead to a serious and heavy loss of funds, reduction in their activities, and loss of human resource as well.
I totally agree with you. We are living in interesting times because those actions have consequences. And one of the important consequences would be that the US influence around the globe will shrink. All those instruments of power, including US aid, was not just only promoting certain values, but also promoting the soft power of United States. And in nature, there is no vacuum. So if you get out of those positions where you are influencing, somebody else will fill in those voids. So there won't be any vacuum. So it will prompt all world powers like Russia and China and middle powers, big countries, even India and Gulf countries. They would have to, think it through. They would revisit their policies of global engagement. Europe is poised to revisit its security arrangement with the US and their relationship with Russia in terms of European security. The tariff policies of Mr. Trump would also impact the global trade order. Now he's threatening BRICS in terms of dollars. So that's another thing. But I think these are very interesting times as Trump policy or Trump 2.0 revolves around the isolationist policies of President Hoover and the Monroe Doctrine to just limit yourself to the Western Hemisphere, consolidate there, and somehow energize the white Anglo-Saxon base in the US, whipping up xenophobia and anti-immigrant bias.
I think I agree with you, Murtaza. I think it seems that instead of promoting US values and interests globally, it seems that the main consideration of the Trump administration is to protect and promote American values and wealth within American territory alone, rather than promoting its wealth and influence at a global scale. So I think there's a remarkable difference between the Biden administration's agenda, and that is also explained by the expectation that Ukraine and Middle East conflicts come to early end. But let's come to another news which is very significant related to South Asia. We have witnessed some interesting developments in Afghanistan recently. And before we discuss and seek your analysis on what's going on and why it is going on and what could it mean, let me share three news with you related to Afghanistan that V News English has recently covered. Number one, Afghanistan received the Indian Foreign Secretary, and there was some talk of connectivity and economic trade promotion as well. The second news is that a number of Afghan women sportswomen, including their women team, are really worried because they are not being supported and tolerated by the current Kabul administration. And they are raising these concerns around the world, including in France, including with the International Cricket Council as well, that they are not being given as much consideration, recognition, facilitation as their male counterparts do. So they have demanded from ICC, International Cricket Council, that the ICC should demand equal treatment and support for both genders to play, train, and represent Afghanistan. And if they don't do that, they should review their support and recognition of the Afghan men's cricket team. That is the second very interesting aspect. But the third one is a rather unusual announcement by Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province government that they want to engage Kabul administration in peace talks. So what's your analysis of what's going on in Afghanistan and what does this mean?
I just want to add something, what's brewing in Washington on Afghanistan. As Mr. Trump took over, he himself has condemned Afghan Taliban government, saying that they have reneged on the promises they made in Doha. At the same time, Trump administration has said a couple of times, actually, some important voices within Trump administration, that the weapons, advanced weapons left behind in Afghanistan must return to the US. Now we will see how they will do it. Will they buy them back like Stingers during the Soviet-Afghan jihad, or do they have other carrots and sticks to make that happen? For Pakistan, it's music to our ears. I'm sure you have seen the statement of Ministry of Foreign Affairs. They have welcomed that statement. And so on that issue, it seems like a new synergy is developing between Pakistan and the Trump administration, if we can find any. Forget what Mr. Gentry Beach said, but on the security issues, this is an important development because many think tanks on the K Street, I'm sure you remember that street, they are raising their voices on what the world already knew, especially the United Nations and UN Security Council, that too many terror groups are operating in Afghanistan, including Al-Qaeda and ISK and anti-China groups. So this is an important development. We will see how Pakistan and the US will or will not, have any coordination on that matter.
Let me, if you allow me, can I just add
Please.
one very significant development on this context specifically that I came across today, and V News English will carry this shortly. And let me, through this forum, announce it that as an evidence of growing possible convergence in counterterrorism domain between Islamabad and Washington, one of the most important and influential member of the Trump's cabinet and team, the nominated person for Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbal, has stated that Afghanistan is again becoming a hotbed for global terrorism and is hosting global terrorist outfits like Daesh and Al-Qaeda, and if they become deeply entrenched, then the US might have to go back into Afghanistan. She has said this unequivocally. So that is something, and she described the hurried, unplanned departure by the Biden administration as a strategic blunder, and she said that this has caused global terrorist outfits to become entrenched in Afghanistan again. And if the threat rises, then the US might have to go back into Afghanistan again. So I think that is something very significant coming from the nominated Director of National Intelligence of the Trump administration. You may continue, sir.
Right. Now, let me answer your question about that reported delegation of KP government crossing the border and going to Afghanistan to discuss this TTP issue with Afghan authorities. If you remember, there was a meeting of political leaders in the presence of Army Chief on January 13 in Peshawar. That was mainly on that issue, where Army Chief and other stakeholders of the state, they told political leadership that whatever we have tried in terms of engaging Afghan authorities, we are facing a dead wall. We are not getting any good response from them, whatever we have done. So there was a proposal there that a delegation of tribal chiefs and some political leaders should go and talk to Afghan authorities. So that news was published today. Actually, there was more to it. For example, it was said that before departing to Afghanistan, they will come to Islamabad and talk to the interlocutors, federal government, and tell them this is what we are going to talk to Afghan authorities, and get the feedback of the federal government before they would go. So it would not be just a provincial government mandated initiative. But looking at that initiative, it's not the initiative of provincial government. It's an action of the political leaders and the tribal people wanting to engage Afghan authorities, supported by the PTI government. Now, probably the federal government would allow them to go because they know what the result will be. If they go and talk to Afghan authorities to ask them to stop TTP from operating there, they would not get a positive answer. So if federal government stops these people, PTI and some people would turn around and say, hey, we were going to make a great success and would have made KP a heaven of peace. And you deprived us from that great opportunity. So my assumption is that the federal government would say, okay, go, give it a try, knowing that it will fail. it will have a miserable failure, and it will eventually reinforce the narrative of the state that these elements are incorrigible. They are joined at the hip, both TTP and Afghan Taliban. They would not throw them out. They would not deprive them of their safe sanctuaries. So it will only help the resolve of the state and the federal government. So that's why.
Let me actually ask you three more questions on this. I think this is a very important issue, and this deserve a very serious consideration. In order for any dialogue or negotiations, which you are aware, to bear any fruit, there are three fundamental things which need to be discussed and understood clearly. Number one, who do the KP government want to engage with? Are they going to engage with Kabul administration, or are they going to engage TTP as well, or both separately? Because traditionally, Afghan government has backed off and encouraged Islamabad to deal with TTP on their own. So that might happen again, and that will be a non-starter. Secondly, what does the Peshawar administration offer Kabul administration as an incentive? What can they offer them, which will persuade TTP to give up arms? Do you think they will offer them sanctuaries and a safe haven or a safe passage like it happened 3 years ago? Are we going to see a repeat of that? And lastly, does this initiative or idea have the support and mandate of Pakistan Army, federal government, Federal Ministry of Interior? Because these three functions are not provincial subjects, and you've been a federal minister, you know it very well. So national security is a federal subject. So how can, as a student of Pakistani constitution, how can a federating unit negotiate on a matter of national security, which is a state function, and a federal subject with another sovereign country?
Well, let me answer the last thing first. Officially, it will not be declared as a delegation of the provincial government. It will be a non-state, unofficial delegation sent from Pakistan. So it will not have any official status. It may have the support of the provincial government, but since they will an unofficial delegation comprised of tribals who discuss some ideas with the provincial and federal government, they desire to go to Afghanistan. Now, who will they discuss their ideas with? They will go to Kabul authorities. I know the answer. They will tell them what they told earlier delegation in 2021, that go talk to TTP, just like we talked with Americans in Doha. That's what they would be told. And that's a non-starter, you already told us. Then the second thing that will come will be repetition of the old demand of Afghan Taliban to provide, to reverse and roll back FATA reforms, which they can't. That was aimed at creating ungoverned space for all terror groups, including Al-Qaeda, to operate on our land as it did during earlier times before 9/11, if you remember. So again, that's a non-starter. Earlier, however, General Faiz had admitted that to Kabul authorities, and even promised that, okay, we will move Supreme Court and declare it unconstitutional. That's not happening. There is no General Faiz, Corps Commander Peshawar, sitting now. The federal government, Pakistan Army are on one page that that was a bad idea and it has hurt us more than helped us. So this the destiny of this delegation is known to all and sundry. It has failure written all over it. But as at the tactical level, I think the federal government would let them go. Maulana Fazal Rahman had gone, if you remember.
Yes.
In an unofficial capacity. There are important figures in this delegation who would concur with the policy of the state, like Sherpao and others. Even you would not be surprised that some leaders from PTI would also stand with the state narrative. But it will only humiliate and insult and weaken the narrative of Mr. Khan and some of those pro-TTP and pro-jihadi elements within the PTI. It has failure written all over it.
Indeed, but I think my short comment would be that it is not prudent and it is not a good precedence that foreign policy should be conducted by a federating unit of a state. But I think
I totally agree with you, but they will say, hey, it was not a provincial government delegation, it was not a federal government delegation. They did talk to us, but you know, if there are some good Samaritans, some civilians, some social organizations, they can bring peace to the province. So go, give it a try. We know what the
okay. So we have a possibility of plausible deniability as well. So I think on that note, I think we conclude today's very lively and rich discussion. Thank you so much for joining us. Please keep watching this program, which brings to you some of the most interesting and important stories and their analysis from around the world, from the region, and from Pakistan. Thank you so much.